Okay, hey, we're looking to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool review for you from the brand Swiss Watch Company, or SWC. Now, a little bit about them. They actually were founded not too long ago, but their founder actually started out when he was 17 years old within working QA for the Swatch Group. And he pretty much worked his way up from there and created his own micro brand. You've seen, I actually reviewed their diver not too long ago, and then they eventually updated their clasp, which was very, very cool. So I was really excited to check out this particular model, the SWC Bunker, which is their take on a titanium field watch. And now, some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for a field watch, is particularly within kind of the classic field watch space. Of course, you're going to want something that's more on the modest sizing. You're going to have Arabic numerals. You'll have a 12 and a 24-hour scale, and typically it'll be on a black or cream dial. So you're going to get a lot of really cool kind of traditional elements here, but at the same time, what I really appreciate is the fact that it's actually quite modern in terms of the execution, being finished in titanium, and also having a hardened titanium, which is even cooler. So you have that hardened coating on it, so you don't have to worry about it scratching or being brittle from that standpoint, or that outer oxidized layer taking on any damages and scuffs like you normally would with a typical titanium cased watch. And also the price is pretty outstanding. This is for under $400, $399 direct, guys. Definitely check for restock and new colorways as they become available. This particular model is only 41 millimeters with 10 millimeters thickness and 46 millimeters lug to lug, grade 2 titanium. So it's going to be more of a pure titanium versus one that's more of an alloy with a blend. So that's pretty nice. And then of course it is matte, fully matte blasted. But let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. All right, guys, now before we dive into it too much, this is not the OEM strap. This is just a strap that I happen to have it on because it is kind of a magnificent pairing. And so first of all, here, this little add-on compass that is actually in titanium is from a brand called, let me just make sure I get the PW or PDW for Prometheus Design Werx. And the strap here is actually from Aught Design, or TAD, and this is their special topographical, and this is made in the US, milled, actually, I want to say milled by Rick Hinderer in terms of knife making. So this is all custom. This is actually the most expensive NATO ever on the channel, guys. This NATO is like a $300 NATO, which is pretty insane. It's known as the Quantum NATO, and this is not a review for the NATO. I mean, obviously the price is just crazy ridiculous, honestly, but this watch really kind of inspired me, and I liked it so much. I really wanted to kind of find that ultimate kind of field watch blend, and I think this is kind of it. I think this is really, in terms of traditional field watch. Now, I have had other tactical watches on the show, but I think this particular kind of layout, it really strikes a chord in terms of just hitting those classic notes while also bringing something quite new to the table, which I dig. I think that's something really cool that SWC did from this standpoint. So, and again, all for under $400, $399 direct. This sapphire has like 16 layers of inner AR coating, so you can see when I get it at an angle where it's going to be reflecting right off of the studio light, that it does a really good job of negotiating those reflections. Now, of course, you can't, there's no amount of AR that's going to make that go away, but when you look at it off angle, you can see just how much clearer it is. It's really, really quite lovely. Let me give it a quick wipe here. All right. As you can see, really, really quite handsome. I dig the layout. It actually kind of reminds me of the Seiko Sarg, the SARGs, I won't say 009 and 011 in terms of the way the numerals are laid out. And that's a total compliment. And then I think at 41 millimeters, most people prefer something like this at 40 or 39 or 38 for a field watch. But because of its kind of plus size, it's not oversized by any means. I mean, if you look at it on my 7¼ inch wrist, this is a field watch. It's absolutely within that range. I think 42 to 43, even up to 45 is still a healthy size for a field watch. Of course, the more traditional kind of old school ones, a little bit more on the petite side, but I think this is far from oversized. I think it actually is so legible that it even crosses over kind of into an air, land, and sea feature, because it does have a screw down crown, so you can get 100 meters of water resistance. Plus, it's actually kind of large enough and legible enough to kind of double as a pilot's watch as well. So I think that's very cool. Now, the crown is screw down, like I mentioned, also signed, which is great. You can see the drilled lugs as well. The movement inside, although you cannot see it, is actually a Sellita SW200. Swiss-made movement, of course, for a Swiss-made watch. Yeah, the case back is, you know, it's not much to write home about. It's just solid and etched. The dial, of course, very simple layout in terms of the fact that it's a matte dial with printed indices, but you're getting 20 layers of X1 grade super luminova there. So once we get to the lume shots on this, I think you guys are going to be quite impressed and quite happy with it. Now, in terms of water resistance, again, 10 atmospheres or 100 meters, which is absolutely great. The lugs are 22 millimeter lugs, so that's one thing that some people might have a point of contention with, because it's a little bit on the wider side, but it's a larger watch. And honestly, I think if they would have done the 20 millimeter lugs on this, it actually would have made the watch it would also make the watch appear a little bit larger. And I don't think that's the look they were going for. Also, 22 millimeters means you can have a thicker strap, which means you can secure it to your wrist, you know, with a little bit of extra security on there as well. It actually does come out of the factory with a leather strap that has a 4 millimeter taper down to 18 millimeters. So 22 at the lug, down to 18 at the titanium signed buckle. And then there's also this nylon Velcro number that is a non-tapering that is also really quite nice. But with all that said, let's actually get this piece on the wrist and show you guys how it wears. All right, guys, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, it wears really, really well. Nice and flat, of course, with only being 10 millimeters thick. Yeah, this thing's sweet. And in terms of the way it wears with the extra gear, obviously this is a bit of a bolder compass that does stick out quite a bit further for a very thin watch. It definitely complements something probably a little bit better if it was a thicker, let's say like a dive watch or something like that. But because it is a field watch and quite thin, this does, you know, of course it sticks out a little bit, but because it's at an angle, I feel like it helps with the visual weight. But I have worn this out, you know, out on my adventures and whatnot, and it serves me well. The strap itself, it's not, you know, again, this is it wasn't made by people that make NATO straps, or, you know, necessarily people that wear watches. So it doesn't really have any of those. It's just very well done in terms of the execution, but in terms of design, they haven't done anything really new in the land of you know, nylon NATO straps. Unfortunately, you know, they could really take some notes from brands like Hardened, who really worked on the wearability, you know, where the placement is, the length, and they have everything really dialed in terms of their execution of a NATO strap. And by design, although the finishing, the actual nylon itself, like everything is absolutely top notch. So from that standpoint, but from a wearability standpoint, there are definitely more comfortable, kind of more well thought out NATOs that are out there on the market for a lot less, like fraction of the cost, like $40. You can get NATOs that are, you know, in terms of wearability, that are going to work better. And of course, I do have a larger wrist, so that's why this doesn't necessarily work perfectly for me. But if you do have a smaller wrist, this strap would, you know, do absolutely fine. I just have a bit of a higher standard when it comes to NATO straps. Obviously, you know, one from wearing NATOs in the past, you know, also while serving active duty within the Marine Corps. But having a little, you know, honestly, like this type of stuff would be way too nice. Back in the day when I was active duty, it's not like I would be, you know, walking in with a Swiss-made field watch, but I'd like to think that I would at some point if I would have stayed in. But you know, this compass is a little overbuilt, and it's just something nice, right? It hits the theme points in terms of wearing a field watch, something that's rugged, titanium, lightweight. It's great. It absolutely works, and it rides the wrist really, really well. And you can see, although it's fully matte blasted there, you can see it still has some beautiful chamfering. You see there's a little knock right there because basically this, you know, if I shake the wrist, it can, you know, come up there and knock it. And that was actually when I had it on a different NATO strap for a while. When I switched it to this one, because of the thicker nylon, it actually helps keep this bad boy in place a little bit better. But you can, as you can see, if you guys have ever, you know, thought about buying this type of setup here in terms of a compass, it's nice because once you get level, that compass will go ahead and, you know, point you to north as needed. So I really like it on wrist. This is a fun watch to wear. And let's actually go ahead and now highlight the Lume on it, because it's really, really outstanding, especially within the field watch genre. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights. Oh, there you go. As you can see, really, really great Lume from that standpoint. Absolutely fantastic. This BGW9 X1 grade is fantastic. It really, really glows, and it's just applied to such a thick level. I mean, you can see the actual compass isn't actually that bad at Lume, but it does pale absolutely in comparison because of how bright the actual Lume is on the dial. Actually, before I get into the low light, why don't I try to give it a little peek of a little black light, just so you can get an idea of that glowing luminescence on the actual very cool on the compass there. So that ring is actually illumined as well. You can see really quite legible. And then one thing I do like to do, as you can see, wow, I don't know if it's fade. Actually, it doesn't fade that fast. That's actually just the camera trying to adjust by how bright the dial Lume is. So don't be fooled. But here we go with some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to be coming in and out of buildings, maybe walking underneath an overhang or the shade of a tree, or just spending time in your favorite automobile. So you're going to be in mixed lighting situations more often than not, and you can actually see, even transitionally, the legibility on here is absolutely outstanding. One of my favorite features about this watch. And I mean, this brand, they just take those simple functional watch geek, you know, touches, and they take them very, very seriously. You can see, even as I get into some harsher high contrast lighting here, still really quite nice, not really exposing. I mean, it's matte blasted, so it's not like there's a lot of, you know, anything to really expose in terms of defect. But you can see, even in this kind of right there, like, look at that, those twilight, you can still really see this thing. It's just so legible. I really, really get a kick out of it. You can't, and then of course the with the date being at 6 o'clock, it's really not disruptive at all to the Lume layout, which is fantastic. I just love that. and you can see, even though I can still see the compass with my naked eye, the camera just doesn't want to look at it because of how bright, which probably tells you that when you're looking at the Lume on this, it actually is much brighter in person. So the camera is kind of toning it down just a hair as well. Now guys, closing thoughts on the wrist. It works just about perfect. It could easily also fit the bill as a pilot's watch as well, which I think is very cool. In terms of model variants, you got the black dial here, there's a blue dial and a cream dial, and then brown and green dials are coming soon. In terms of comparable models, this really just, you know, blows the doors off of, you know, all the many variations of the Hamilton khaki field and pilot lines, and it does an outstanding job. It's not that much cheaper than those. I mean, especially if you're gonna go like gray market or something in comparison. But this watch just hits the spots, and I really dig that, and it's very handsome aesthetically, and it does the job functionally. So it really, for me, checks two huge boxes, and the aesthetic is, you know, it's, might I say, even unbeatable in terms of a traditional field watch. And I think even the sizing for me is great. I think that 41 millimeters is really nicely dialed in. Even if they made it a little bit smaller, I guess that could be cool too. Maybe do a 20 millimeter lug width and a 40 millimeter case, or a 38 millimeter case with a 20 millimeter lug width, or 39 seems to be the sweet spot for many people these days. That would be cool too, don't get me wrong. But there's also a lot of field watches within that space, and I think this one has a little bit more versatility because of the bolder aesthetic, and also the size being just a hair larger. So guys, in terms of bottom line here on this one, it's just a spec beast for the price, and honestly, it's one of the best dedicated field watches on the market. Like, if you want a field watch, and you're gonna look at a lot of different things, whether it be looking at Hamilton, Victorinox, or, you know, in terms of a mechanical, especially if you're gonna go the Swiss route, mechanical Swiss-made field watch, it's going to be really tough to find something that's going to give you better value than this. And you know, and then if you like the way it looks, it's going to be very hard to find a watch that looks this darn good, that fits the same purpose. So with that said, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.